Yeah, family, y'all. Just keep it tight, keep it tight, keep it tight. Oh, right. Yeah. Here we go.
Before we conclude, it would be important for us to recognize various issues, especially between the American Catholic Church and the Roman Church, only because there has been some tension historically, not so much here in Austin, but in other places throughout the United States, between Roman Catholic bishops and members of independent Catholic churches, including the American Catholic Church in the United States. One question is the question of the validity of sacraments. Are the sacraments of the American Catholic Church valid? The question arises, what makes a sacrament valid? The Church has always said that there is a distinction. Sacraments may not be illicit or legal, according to some people, but validity is the main concern. Whether a sacrament is valid or not. Whether a sacrament really occurred. If the sacrament is valid, it has to be conferred by a validly ordained deacon or priest, or by a validly consecrated bishop. The Roman Catholic Diocese of Austin has published a pastoral manual, which is fascinating reading, but it's long. It's like 600 pages maybe. So in their pastoral manual of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Austin, pages L11, and more specifically page L17, they cite the validity of baptisms performed in old Catholic churches like the American Catholic Church. The validity of baptisms in the old Catholic Church, and they even use that language. All baptisms conferred by the old Catholic Church, says the Roman Catholic Diocese of Austin, are recognized as valid. What's fascinating is that the American Catholic Church, though, doesn't simply trace its apostolic succession through the old Catholic Church. We remember from our previous lesson that our lines of apostolic succession flow through the old Catholic Church and through the Roman Catholic Church and through the Orthodox Catholic Church. So it's not simply that we are old Catholic. We are Roman Catholic and Orthodox Catholic. We are Catholic. We have lines of apostolic succession in all those areas. So, in the pastoral manual of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Austin, it talks about the validity of baptisms performed in the old Catholic Church, of which the American Catholic Church in the United States is part. But it goes even further. For those who are willing to open the pastoral manual of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Austin to page M17, at least at the time at which we got these words, on page M17, it says, for those priests and bishops who care to read their own pastoral manual, it says, in talking about these various churches that have divided from the Roman Church, it says, in each of these churches, the Church of God is built up and grows in stature, and although separated from us, as Roman Catholics, these churches possess true sacraments. Let me say that again, because the Roman Catholic Diocese of Austin, its pastoral manual, correctly says on page M17 that all these churches, even if separated from us, possess true sacraments. Above all, by apostolic succession, about which we've talked, the priesthood and Eucharist. It continues, this offers ecclesiological and sacramental grounds for allowing and even encouraging some sharing in liturgical worship, even Eucharistic, with these churches. Are you sinning by going to Mass at Holy Family? Read the pastoral manual of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Austin. It even allows some grounds for encouraging some sharing in liturgical worship, even Eucharistic, with these churches. It's recognizing how it is that we have more in common than will ever separate us. We have that common history. We have valid lines of succession in all of these churches. So how it is that not even the Roman Church points at us and says, wait a minute, they're not validly ordained or validly consecrated. No one in the Roman Catholic Church has said that, for instance, of Father Jamie. That Father Jamie is not validly ordained. If Father Jamie is validly ordained, and if not, then really you're making a statement on the validity of the consecration of Archbishop Gregory Aymond. You're not talking about Father Jamie so much as you're talking about the guy who consecrated him. If Father Jamie is validly ordained, then the sacraments that he confers are valid sacraments. And that's what the Roman Catholic Diocese of Austin and its pastoral manual is saying. A manual likely written not by the present bishop but by his predecessor. Interesting how it is that they recognize our sacraments as valid. That's here in Austin, Texas. What about on a global level? Have popes said anything about these things? Pope John Paul II was perhaps the first. As conservative as he was on many issues, he was one who said in his 2000 encyclical letter, Dominus Jesus, Pope John Paul II said, "The churches which, while not existing in perfect communion with the Roman Church, remain united to her by means of the closest bonds, that is, by apostolic succession and a valid Eucharist. They are true, particular churches," he says. Let's unpack John Paul II's words. So, John Paul II says, these churches, which, even though they're not in perfect communion with us, they remain united to us. How? Through the closest bonds of apostolic succession. They have apostolic succession as well, he's saying. And they also have a valid Eucharist. That was a radical statement by John Paul II. So these churches, even though they're separated from us, they have apostolic succession and they have valid sacraments. He says they are true, particular churches. And he continues, "Therefore these separated churches and communities as such have by no means been deprived of significance and importance in the mystery of salvation. For the Spirit of Christ has not refrained from using them as means of salvation, which derive their efficacy from the very fullness of grace and truth entrusted to the Catholic Church. Therefore, the Church of Christ is present and operative also in these churches, even though they lack full communion with the Roman Catholic Church." End quote. Let's unpack that. So these churches and communities, even though they are separate from us as a Roman Catholic Church, they're not part of the Roman Catholic Church, they are separate from us, they have separated from us, but they are by no means deprived of importance in the mystery of salvation. There is still, people will still get into heaven. Remember, Christ is the gate, right? These churches are still helping to lead people closer to Christ. Because it says that they derive their efficacy and the efficacy of their sacraments from the grace and truth entrusted to the Catholic Church. This Catholic Church, of which the Orthodox or right-believing Catholic Church is part, of which the Roman Catholic Church separated and is still part, and of which the Old Catholic Church separated and is still part, all of these Catholic churches share apostolic succession and share a valid Eucharist. So even though, he says, even though they lack full communion with the Roman Catholic Church, the Church of Christ is present and operative in these churches. That was quite a statement for John Paul II to make in 2000. Another voice that we often look to, a canonist, Father John Hughes, wrote a book which he called the Pastoral Companion, a canon law handbook for Roman Catholic ministry. So remember that we have these 1700 plus canons or laws in the Roman Catholic Church. We need people to interpret them. So people like Father John Hughes, a Roman Catholic priest, helps to interpret those laws as a canonist. And the conclusion that he drew was, quote, "The principal condition is that these sacraments can be received only from validly ordained ministers." A valid sacrament, who does it have to come from? A validly ordained minister. Whew. So, Deacon Roy. When Deacon Roy baptizes a child, the question is that baptism valid? Well, it is a valid baptism. Ooh, actually, anyone can confer the sacrament of baptism. Let's choose a different sacrament. So, anyone who baptizes with water in the name of the Father, and Son, and the Holy Spirit, anyone who does that is validly baptized. And let's choose another sacrament then. Deacon Roy is going to marry a couple. So, Deacon Roy is going to marry a couple. The question is that marriage valid? Well, the question is Deacon Roy validly ordained? Because if he is validly ordained, then it is a valid sacrament. In this case, that's why apostolic succession is so important, because Archbishop Johnson enjoys apostolic succession, which means that when he ordained Deacon Roy to the diaconate, then Deacon Roy was validly ordained, which means that his sacraments are valid. So John Hewell says, the principal condition is that these sacraments can be received only from validly ordained ministers. Okay? These are ministers who belong to churches that have preserved the substance of the Eucharistic teaching, the sacraments of holy orders, and apostolic succession. So what do all these Catholic churches have in common? They retain apostolic succession and the teaching on the Eucharist and the teaching on holy orders. That when one person lays hands on another person and shares with that person the gift of the Spirit, then that traces its way back to the apostles. That's the sacrament of orders and apostolic succession. And then he goes on to say, this would include all Eastern non-Catholic churches, the Polish National Church, the Old Catholic and Old Roman Catholic churches. So in his commentary on canon law, Father John Hewell's a Roman Catholic priest is saying, those who are part of the Old Catholic Church, they have valid Catholic sacraments. You need not fear. That's why that letter by Bishop Joe Vasquez a few years ago was so deceptive. When he says that Father Jamie's sacraments may not be valid, he knows better than that. He's studied enough. He was in the seminary long enough to know that they are valid sacraments. Whether or not he considers them licit, yes, in his letter he says they may be gravely illicit. According to the church, they may be illegal according to those 1700 canons. According to those laws, it may be illegal for Father Jamie to celebrate the sacraments, which is why I never celebrated the sacraments after leaving the Roman Church until incardinating, because the sacraments would have been illicit, but they would have been valid. They were valid, even if they would have been illicit, which is why I waited. After leaving the Roman Church, I waited until I was incardinated in the American Catholic Church, so that my sacraments were, yes, valid, but also licit again. Another religious scholar, William Whalen, comes to the same conclusion. He says, quote, "We have no reason to doubt that the old Catholic orders are valid." So if a person is if a person is ordained or consecrated in the Old Catholic Church, he says, we have no reason to doubt that the Old Catholic orders, that the sacrament of holy orders received by those in the Old Catholic Church are valid. We have no reason to doubt that. He says, the apostolic succession does not depend on obedience to the see of Peter, oh that's good news, but rather on the objective line of succession from apostolic sources, the proper matter and form and the proper intention. Let's unpack that. In order for you to have valid Catholic sacraments or orders, you don't have to profess obedience to the see of Peter, which we know as the Pope. You don't have to profess obedience to the Pope in order to have valid sacraments, he's saying. But rather, what does it depend on? An objective line of succession to the apostles of apostolic succession, which is why apostolic succession is so important. It depends on that. It also depends on the proper matter and form, which simply means that in any sacrament, there are certain things that you have to follow. With the Eucharist, it has to be bread and wine, and you have to say certain words. With ordination, you have to do certain things, like lay your hands on the head of that person, and you have to say certain words in order to effect that sacrament. So long as we follow those forms, so long as there's proper matter and form and proper intention, you have to intend to ordain that person or to consecrate that person, then that person is validly ordained or consecrated. Whalen continues, likewise, Old Catholic bishops are bishops in apostolic succession, and the Old Catholics, like the Orthodox Catholics, possess a valid priesthood. So this is a Roman Catholic saying, yes, the Old Catholic and the Orthodox, or right-believing Catholics, even though they're not part of the Roman Church, they do possess a valid priesthood. Thomas Doyle, a Dominican priest in the Roman Catholic Church, says, Catholics may receive the Eucharist penance or anointing of the sick from sacred ministers of non-Catholic denominations whose holy orders are considered valid by the Catholic Church. So by that he means by non-Roman Catholic denominations. So this is another Roman Catholic canonist telling Roman Catholics that you may receive sacraments from others whose orders are from other non-Roman Catholic churches, whose orders are considered valid by the Roman Catholic Church. This includes all Eastern Orthodox priests, which here we know of as the Orthodox Catholic Church, as well as priests of the Old Catholic or Polish National Church. And so, all of that simply to say there is no reason to doubt the validity of sacraments in the American Catholic Church or in other independent Catholic churches that enjoy apostolic succession. I'm not going to say in all independent Catholic churches. I can't speak for all independent Catholic churches, because what's important are these lines of apostolic succession. If a church has valid lines of apostolic succession, then that church has valid sacraments. So long as an independent Catholic church has lines of apostolic succession, then that church has, according to all of these canonists in the Roman Catholic Church, those churches have valid sacraments. So, even if individual priests and or bishops might disagree, I know there's one parish here in Austin that continues to print in its bulletin that all confirmations received at Holy Family Catholic Church, all confirmations are not recognized at that parish. Say, what? Have they read their pastoral manual and all these other documents? Essentially what they're doing is one priest in one parish in Austin is deciding that he will not accept confirmations done at Holy Family Catholic Church, even though there are valid lines of apostolic succession to Archbishop Johnson, who is conferring that sacrament validly upon those who go to him. How fascinating that a priest in his wisdom has decided that that sacrament is not accepted in that church. So what does that mean? So that priest, for instance, the sacrament of confirmation, if that church requires their godparents to be confirmed, okay, talking about requirements of sacraments now. So if they require, okay, in order for you to be a godparent in baptism, you must be confirmed Catholic. Okay, so in order to be a godparent, you have to be a confirmed Catholic. But then what he's saying is that if you were confirmed at Holy Family Catholic Church by Archbishop Johnson, then we don't count that. Wait a minute. Who are you to decide that? You know what we tell people at Holy Family Catholic Church? We tell people all the time, if they will not baptize your child with the godparents that you want at that church, we happily welcome you. We don't see it as our job to turn you away simply because you have a certificate of confirmation from another church that's not part of the Roman Catholic Church. It is a valid sacrament. So if they won't celebrate the sacraments with you, come to the American Catholic Church. Come to Holy Family. It's not our job to exclude others. We hear that with so many other sacraments, right? With marriage, you have to be married in the church. Okay, does that mean that if you're married in the American Catholic Church in the United States, it's not valid? Any sacrament conferred by validly ordained ministers, we heard from people in the Roman Catholic Church, including John Paul II, right? So it's hubris for whatever Catholic priest in whatever parish to not accept a sacrament of churches outside the Roman Catholic Church, when even the popes of his own church have said that those churches' sacraments are valid. That's hubris for any priest or bishop to say that. And so even if individual priests or bishops may beg to differ, know that all of these churches, even outside the Roman Catholic flock, remember Jesus saying, I have sheep that are that are not part of this fold. Isn't that the case here as well? For those of us who were raised in the Roman Catholic Church and thought that Jesus only took care of the sheep within this fold, no. Jesus says in John chapter 10, I have sheep who are not part of this fold. And of course, Jesus was not talking about the Roman Catholic Church. Maybe Jesus is talking about the Orthodox or regular church, right? I have sheep now, the Roman Catholics, who are not part of this fold.
So, just a quick question. say Deacon Roy married a couple in the American Catholic Church,
There you go.
and then they decide to go back to the Roman Catholic Church for some reason. They just decided to go back to the Roman Catholic Church. It would be a valid sacrament because of the apostolic succession.
There you go.
But would it be licit in the Roman Catholic Church?
Excellent question. So we are outside of the Roman Catholic Church, so we're not Roman Catholic ministers. So we have our own determinations of what is valid and what is licit. So within the American Catholic Church, it is valid and licit.
Right.
The question is, it's essentially a questioning. So if Deacon Roy marries another couple, that is a valid sacrament. The question is, do other churches recognize them as valid, and if it were performed in its own church? Because licit really is if it's only performed within that church. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So the licitness of a sacrament is only determined by the church within which it operates because of its laws, right? If you are part of our church, these are the laws by which you must do those sacraments. So Deacon Roy has performed a sacrament which is valid and licit within the American Catholic Church. The question is whether its validity is recognized by other churches. Licit only applies to the church within which you're part because only the rules of that church apply to you. So to wonder whether Father saying these sacraments are licit in the Roman Catholic Church or not is a moot point, only because I'm not operating within the Roman Catholic Church. Whether or not my sacraments are legal in their church is not important to me. Whether they're valid is of importance not only to me and to everyone in the church, but also to persons in other churches as well. It would be important to know that your sacraments are valid. It would be important to know.
And they would be because whatever church they go to, they would not force them to become married in the Roman Catholic Church. They shouldn't.
Well, that's the question. So the question is, would that sacrament be recognized by other priests in other Catholic churches? What these canonists and what John Paul II and what the Pastoral Manual of the Diocese of Boston is saying is that, yes, they're valid sacraments, but then what do you do when a priest in a certain parish that shall remain unnamed, Our Lady of Guadalupe, says, I will not accept your confirmation certificates? That priest is making a determination about the validity of that sacrament. Why would a person do that? I mean, we've got to imagine that a person like this, that part of the reason that we have these tensions between independent Catholic churches and the Roman Church is because the Roman Church perceives the independent Catholic Church as stealing people. You're stealing kids from our confirmation program. We had this beautiful confirmation program with 160 kids enrolled who had all agreed to go for 2 years of classes and to go on this retreat and to do 40 hours community service and to do all these requirements. And so now for you to come along with less requirements and to require less of them, that is unacceptable to us in our church. In order for a person to be confirmed in our church, we have all these sacraments, so we're not going to recognize yours so that we keep these kids coming to our church and paying whatever amount per year for classes and whatever else they do. No. Is that the church that Christ intended? And so it's hubris to reject, to say that a sacrament is not valid. I mean, why would you not accept a sacramental certificate from an independent Catholic church which has lines of apostolic succession? Why would you not accept that? Is there a good reason for not accepting that? Of course, let's go back to what we said here. Everything that we do is for a reason. The reason that that priest at that parish, which shall remain unnamed, Our Lady of Guadalupe, rejected that certificate is not because that priest is an evil, malicious man, I'd like to think. That's not the reason that he rejected it. It's because that he believed that he was doing a good. He was helping to protect his parish or his church or the Roman Catholic Church by not accepting this. So everything that we do for reasons that we believe are good at that moment. But then we just have to take a look at that and ask ourselves some deep questions. Why are you doing that? Right? If your own pastoral manual in your diocese, if your own pope, or all these other canonists have said that these are valid sacraments, who are you? That is complete hubris for you to determine that these sacraments are valid or not, or that you will or will not accept sacramental certificates. Hubris. Who should be the judge of all these things? I believe it's persons outside of us. That's why in the church, all of these decisions were not made by single people, like pastors of certain parishes. It was made when all of us came together as a church in council, which is essentially the leadership model in the American Catholic Church. It's not one person dictating what it is that all the rest will do. It's us coming together and coming up with how it is we're going to live as a community.